she's got like this like cover in her Bible. Hold on.
Yes, and when
Well, welcome everyone to the first episode of hopefully what is going to be a maybe weekly, maybe bi-weekly series here on Small Town Online Ministries. Welcome to the first episode of Holy Grounds. Now, I want to first let everyone know that name of this podcast was, we came up with it less than a minute ago as of recording this right here. So you can thank my wife, our pastor who works here, and ChatGPT. All right? So
and
welcome.
God.
And God, yes. So welcome to the first episode of Holy Grounds. I'm Austin. I host Translation Tuesday here on Small Town Online Ministries. This is my wife. She actually listens to my podcast through the wall of our office/guest bedroom while I'm doing it. Oftentimes she has to tell me, is like, do I need to turn the TV down? I'm like, yes, you do. This is my cousin Patrick. We grew up together, grew up in the church together, so all three Nazarenes chilling here. And today, for the first episode, we're actually going through a book that, I'm going to be honest, I'm not too familiar with when it comes to knowing core details of. I could probably give you like the most basic rendition of it, but, you know, I've never really read through the book of Ruth. And hopefully this discussion enlightens us on some things. I know we do have multiple translations sitting here. I've got my New King James and my New English translation. I know my wife has a King James Spiral Bible.
And this one's NIV.
And an NIV Study Bible. And Patrick here has a New American Standard Cross-Reference Edition. So we're going to go ahead and get started. This is not us reading through the book, but rather discussing what we read. So who would like to start?
I think we should just look at the beginning of Ruth 1. This story, at the heart of it, is a story of redemption. And I truly think that's what we need to keep focused here, because we are going to see God at work the entire time. So it may not appear like it, but you're going to see parallels between the story of Naomi and Ruth and the story of Jesus when he comes. So it's almost like prophecy being foretold. Mm-hmm. And so just by reading verse 1, now it came about in the days when the judges governed that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the land of Moab with his wife and his 2 sons. So already to begin, now we have a famine. Now think about where we are. We're in Bethlehem in Judah. What else happened in Bethlehem in Judah?
Jesus.
That's exactly right. So when you think about it, we are in probably the holiest of lands right now. Yeah. They don't realize it yet, of course, because, you know, Old Testament's going to tell us, yay, we do good, thanks God, and here's something else cool, and oh, sorry, God.
Like, it's funny that you mentioned that, like it says in the time of the judges. So we just came out of the book of Judges here. So Ruth actually takes us a step back timeline-wise. So.
I do want to bring up a point, though. So when it talks about famine, so looking at 2 Chronicles 7:13 through 14, it says, if I shut up the heavens so that there is no rain, or if I command the locusts to devour the land, or if I send pestilence among my people, and my people who are called by my name humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, will forgive their sin, and will heal their land. So already at the beginning of Ruth 1, it's telling us God's not going to send a famine unless the people have already walked away again. So the people have walked away. So God is like, here's the famine.
Yeah, there's another callback to Judges, and the people of Israel did what was right in their own eyes.
Yep, and so we have a famine. And Naomi, we don't have Ruth yet. I know we're in the book of Ruth, but Ruth doesn't come on for a hot minute. Naomi's with her husband, whose name is Elimelech, verse 2, and her 2 sons. And I think it's kind of important to also understand their names. I did a lot of research on this. I was so excited for this. So first, Elimelech.
What a name, by the way.
It is a name. Elimelech means God is my king.
So he's like God's number 1 fan. He's like, my name is going to represent that.
And Naomi means pleasant. And I don't know if you know this, but Bethlehem actually translates to, let me find it, house of bread. So we have a famine in the house of bread with somebody whose name translates to God is my king and somebody whose name translates to pleasant. Please remember that. It's very important later that you understand why Naomi's name is this. But they saw the situation and they were like, you know what? We're done. We're going to just go somewhere else. We're going somewhere else. And
You're done.
And we should probably know where they go.
All right, I'll head out.
So, in verse 2, it tells us that they go to the land of Moab.
And what does Moab mean?
Moab is a person, but...
Well, you also say they don't just go to it. So, one of the great things about the New English translation is, like, the text, as y'all can see, like, the text of the actual scripture is the smallest. It's all these notes around. So... it gives us all these different translation ideas. The New American said sojourn. New King James said dwell. The NIV, the NRSV, the New Living, the NCV all say to live. So they're not just going there to just go there. They're going there to actually, like,
they're
take up
living.
residency.
They're living.
Right.
And it actually says that they stay there for 10 years. And we're going to talk in a second what can happen in 10 years. But let me find, and I'm so sorry, this is one of those books where you definitely know it's somewhere in the Old Testament, but you don't know where it is because you're not as good at finding
What are you looking for?
I'm looking for Zephaniah.
Oh, that's
It's in there. It's in
Mike,
So Zephaniah, I'm going to go to chapter 2. Wow, if I could say Bible parts right. Chapter 2, verse 9. And I'm going to let you all get there because I think it's very important you understand who Moab is.
This is the church experience.
Oh my gosh, come back here.
Yeah.
Therefore, as I live, declares the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, surely Moab will be like Sodom, and the sons of Ammon like Gomorrah, a place possessed by nettles and salt pits and a perpetual desolation. The remnant of my people will plunder them, and the remainder of my nation will inherit them. So, Moab and Ammon are two people. So, remember back to the story where Sodom and Gomorrah gets destroyed, and we get to Lot's wife turning around and looking, and she's like, oh, I want to go back so longingly. She turns to a pillar of salt. You know that story? Mm-hmm. Well, so Lot has two daughters, okay? I don't remember their names. Sorry, everybody watching.
I don't think they're named.
I don't know if they are. But what they do is they go to a cave. I'm kind of paraphrasing now. And they're like, what are we going to do? Because all the young men are being destroyed, and if we don't have men, then we're going to be barren for the rest of our lives. Mm-hmm. So they get Lot drunk, seduce him, then have kids, and the kids' names are Moab and Ammon. So these are the kids that come from that situation. And Psalms talks about Moab a little more in depth, and he's not like really long drawn out. Like, this is what the comparison is. If you go to Psalms 108:9, 108:9 says, Moab is my wash bowl. He literally says that it's that dirty. That's where you wash.
Mine just says wash basin.
Yeah, mine does too.
So he's basically like, Moab, the place.
I clean my dirty dishes.
Ew, exactly.
I clean my dirty dishes with
This
these
is where I
people.
put my dirty stuff.
Ew,
These are my dirty people.
Ooh.
So we are going from the house of bread, where the Lord is later going to come from, to the wash basin of the world right now. And it's literally right here in Scripture. So we know that Moab is not this desired place to go, but because we have a little bit of, we don't have food right now, we're going to go to the wash basin. And so we're really showing kind of where this lies. Like, we already see that we're away from God, and I'm not saying that Elimelech and Naomi and them were away from God, but, you know, when you get clouded by everything going on, and now you're dealing with a situation that you feel like you can't take control of, you seem to go to the next best thing, which happened to be the dirtiest place that they could go.
Yeah, the wash basin.
The wash basin.
That's the word of the podcast, by the way.
Wash basin.
So I actually listened to...
since we are in Appalachia, the Wash Bowl.
The Wash Bowl. This is the Wash Bowl.
Wash Bowl.
Now, when I listened to a commentary about this, he said that the Moabites are from cave to grave because that's where they were conceived, and they will die because of their dirtiness.
Yeah, so the New English, when you get back to Zephaniah, what you said, the New English renders that verse, therefore, surely as I live, says the Lord, the heavens, armies, the God of Israel, but certain that Moab will become like Sodom and the Amorites like Gomorrah. They will be overrun like weeds, filled with salt pits, and permanently desolate. Overrun like weeds, just overrun, forgotten, abandoned, a eyesore.
Yeah.
Like we see a house on the, like you're driving through town and you see a house overgrown with weeds and stuff. It's an eyesore. You'll look at it for a second, but then you're just like, ugh.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
I mean, that's literally what we're looking at now, and that's where they went because there was a famine. And we really don't get very far.
Oh, and that just shows you like how like devastating this famine had to be, that they'd had to go from a place in the Holy Land to trash.
Yeah.
Like how desperate do you have to be to go to a place that's just filthy?
That's
As we go forward, verse 3 and 4 don't end very well for Naomi. So we go to Moab, the wash bowl of the Old Testament world, and Elimelech dies in verse 3. And then the sons get married to pagan women, so women from Moab, and then they die in verse 5. So in the first 5 verses of Ruth, there's a famine, we move to the wash basin, my husband dies, my kids marry pagans, and my kids die.
Yeah.
Does it ever say what they died of, or does it just say that
Just says they died. And now just think about being Naomi for a second. You go because you think it's the best thing to do, and now your husband and your 2 kids are dead.
Was because she was a part of that generation that turned from the Lord.
Yeah. And so it really just makes you think, what does the Lord have against me right now? Like, I lived in a famine. I came here because I thought it would be better. And it never became better. It just progressively got worse.
I bet you Naomi's feeling like Job right now. Like,
Literally.
why me?
Why me? Why me? And so we do now get introduced to our 2 new characters, Orpah and Ruth. So Orpah and Ruth, if I'm not mistaken, yes, they're both from Moab. They're both pagans. They both serve a different role later in the story. So we have our 2 women. We have Orpah. We have Ruth. And verse 6, now, so back to our first 5 verses. Famine, leave, dead husband, pagan wives, dead sons. Verse 6, then she arose with her daughters-in-law that she might return from the land of Moab, for she had heard in the land of Moab that the Lord had visited his people in giving them food. So now, that verse, she's talking about Bethlehem. So she waits the 10 long years. Now, they have bread. And that was the goal in the long run. So now you have to kind of be thinking about, Naomi's like, should I have just stayed there? Like,
Yeah.
should I have just stayed there?
I mean, it was obvious reasons that she had to go to Moab, or else, because we know who Ruth is in the genealogy of Christ. You know, Ruth right here, you know, she gets her own book, but Ruth is considered a Gentile. She's a foreigner to the Jews. And later we're going to see why it's important, but Ruth in her own book is described as a Gentile, a foreigner, but one of the genealogies tie Ruth into the genealogy of Christ because she is the great-grandmother or grandmother of David.
I think it's Matthew's.
Okay. She's in the genealogy of David. David comes from her. Mm-hmm. David, king of the Jews, comes from a Gentile.
Yeah. And I mean, did Naomi know that all this had to happen? No. She had no idea that all this had to happen.
But she was spared all of this for reasons. Notice, like, her husband, dead. And as a woman of the time, you know, she probably could have suffered worse fates, too. She probably could have been kidnapped, used for slavery, used for service, used as a housemaid, something. But she spared all this in 10 years because her lineage, well, not necessarily her lineage, but her story and her role of getting Ruth from Moab to Bethlehem makes perfect sense. Mm-hmm. And the house of David, that's what Bethlehem is called, because Christ comes from the house of David. He comes from the lineage of David. David's from Bethlehem, all right? And I think this is only the second mention of Bethlehem in the Bible after Genesis. Like Genesis is the first mention of Bethlehem. You get to Ruth, and then you get to Kings. I think it's Kings or wherever. No, Samuel, when David's first mentioned. And then Bethlehem is, I think it's later mentioned in the Minor Prophets. But then it's like Bethlehem is like scarcely mentioned in the Old Testament, but it just plays such an important role.
Well, and you have to remember, none of these people realized how important this town actually was.
No,
it was a town.
And we see in the New Testament, it's in Nazareth, Galilee, the backwaters. It's like where we grew up in Buffalo and Sissonville. Like, what good comes out of Nazareth?
Exactly.
What good ever came out of Sissonville? What good ever came out of Buffalo? And I'm sure there is, but no major politician came out of our town.
We had a presidential candidate in the 1930s.
We did?
Yep. There's a sign about it in front of the historical building.
And Sissonville had an MTV show. Not a good one.
Yes, what good ever came out of Sissonville?
Not a good one.
We had one.
Oh. Cut off. But the beautiful thing about all this is she's going back to Bethlehem. That's the plan. She's going to go. It's never too late to go back. Doesn't matter how long it takes. It's never too late. And this story ties into a lot that we know. The prodigal son. Hey, I hear you got some money. I want it. Okay, now I'm going to go party and do stuff. And now I'm walking home because I have no money. And I will be your servant. And never too late to come back. Welcomed right back in. So I think that's another thing to realize, that even though all this time had passed and she had immersed herself almost how we would consider the world.
Yeah, because like in chapter 2, verse 14, the way Boaz is speaking to, I believe it's, who's he speaking
That's to Ruth.
He's speaking to Ruth. Mm-hmm. Just like the prodigal son, he says to her, come here and have some food. She's a foreigner, and, the prodigal son, technically by custom, became a foreigner to his family by abandoning or leaving them. And the father offers him some of the best food. He goes, slaughter the fatted calf. Like, we're going to have a feast. He looks at this foreign woman and says, come eat. And they're at the table. They're at a table not designed or not welcoming to foreigners. He said, hey, come have some food. And then later it says, so she sat down by the harvesters, the workers who are a part of the family, who are, or as Jesus says, she's the dog eating at the table of the master. She's not getting the scraps on the floor. The dog gets to eat at the table with its owners. Now, it's all it's figurative speech.
The crazy thing is, we say she's a foreigner in this situation, and by heritage, I guess is the correct word, she is a foreigner. But to Boaz, she isn't a foreigner.
No.
And I think that's so important to understand, because Boaz, and we'll talk about him in a second, because he actually plays a completely different role than people think. But Boaz is related to Naomi. Mm-hmm. That's Elimelech's relative, which she doesn't even realize. So there's a reason why he falls in there, and I do have a point about him. But before we get to him specifically and break down what he's doing and what he says, we need to talk about Naomi acting like a mother again. And just looking at verse 8. And Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, go return each of you to her mother's house. So they were sticking by her side, even though she was only the mother-in-law. You need to go to your parents. I have had my time. My husband, my kids are dead. Go back to your parents. And so, of course,
she's not trying to abandon them, saying, I can't take care of you. She said, you will probably be prosperous and better off if you do not stick by my side.
Well, and she wasn't looking after her own self. She was looking after others.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is, there was a law around this time that if you were married to a son and the son died, then the daughter would go to the next son. And so, number one, it makes you think, could you imagine the oldest brother coming home and being like, hey, I'm with this new girl, and his brother's like, let us see her because we may be stuck with her when you die. But
that's the crazy thing about that culture. I'm just like,
ooh.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing about it was, I didn't know this until I read about it, but if the original husband died, And
he didn't have kids.
They didn't have kids, and they went to the next kid, and they had kids. That was still considered the oldest kid's son.
Yep.
And
I'm glad we don't do that anymore.
But, you know, and Naomi's like, girls, I can have no more babies. Please go back.
Old.
Well, and then she said, even if I could have babies, are you going to wait?
Are you going to wait?
Are you going to wait till they're old enough? Well, in their culture, it would have been in their teenage years. But still, that's waiting.
But still,
and they would have been waiting for what? Would they have lived?
Exactly. So she's trying to send them back, and I think she's trying to be a comforter there. And of course, now we get the two different responses. At first, both Orpah and Naomi are like, "No, we'll go with you, Naomi." But
Orpah eventually says, "Deuces."
She does. She's like, "Bye, I'm gonna go back." But then Ruth is who stays.
And that's why we have the Book of Ruth,
and that's
the Book
why,
of Orpah.
Well, and you know, I listened to a commentary, and it was like, as soon as Orpah said, "Bye," she's done. She has no more in this book.
You're done.
You're done.
Like, she is no longer in the book.
Yep.
Her character, gone.
Gone from...
She goes home.
From all of Scripture.
Yeah.
She's just gone.
And, you know, there's nothing wrong with Orpah choosing to go home.
No.
There's really not, because she was given the option.
She was given permission. Like, she took it.
And so, the commentary ended by saying, after saying Orpah's done, they were like, are you going to be a kisser or are you going to be a cleaver? And so that's the difference here. Orpah kissed Naomi goodbye, went home, and Ruth was like, I am going to stay with you. Whoever you go to, wherever you live, whatever God you worship, those will become mine. And that just shows how strong that is. Like, Ruth has no other connection to Naomi except the fact that she married her son. And from what we read, he may not have lived very long after the marriage. But that's all they have together. She's like, I'm going to go with you. She actually says, verse 16, do not urge me to leave you or turn back from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. Thus may the Lord do to me, and worse in anything but death parts you and me. I mean, and think about this. They were pagans. She wasn't like, oh, yes, your God, totally my God. She probably had a whole different religious system that she was taught growing up. And so this just goes to say, whatever connection they had, and, you know, the only thing that really, like, as I was reading this, and this may be completely wrong, but the only thing to me that connected them together was, and I wrote this down, was the fellowship of suffering. They were connected because they both went through terrible loss. They were both widows. They both cried to each other, and that bonded them together.
Not only that, they experienced famine together.
They're trauma bonded.
Literally.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it feels like there. Like, I mean, it's just like, Ruth is like, I'm going to go with you because we've been in this since the beginning together. Like, I'm not going to let you go and die off on your own, which is almost what it sounds like Naomi wanted to do. Mm-hmm. Like, let me go back alone because there's really nothing left for me.
Well, at one point she mentions that she wants to change her name to, what was it? Mara. Mara.
Yeah,
which means better.
Right, but
yeah.
she says that, is that in chapter 2 or is that chapter 1?
That's still chapter 1.
Like, towards the end of
well,
chapter
think
1.
about it. Naomi means pleasant. Mara means bitter.
Yeah.
Right, but God won't allow it.
Yeah.
Notice that she says that because...
And it never says Mara again.
No, that's the only time we see that name, because God's like, no, your name means something special. It means something special to him, and it's going to mean something special to your descendants.
Do you think she knew that was the name she wanted to go by, or do you think she used ChatGPT? What name did I tell people when I come in?
What would you call ChatGPT back then?
I have no idea.
I don't know.
But
we'll cut that back in a little
and
bit.
you know, like, just thinking about it though, like, she comes in, she thinks God's against her at this point. And rightfully so. I'm not saying that, like, we know because we read and we're like, okay, actually this is for the better.
Yeah.
But we know because she's dealt with all of this essentially by herself now. And now she's got Ruth, and she's not happy. Like, if you were to have all this loss back to back to back, and everything was to go against you, you would feel the same way. No, I'm not pleasant. I'm bitter because God turned his back on me.
Yeah.
And that's not saying God did turn his back on her. That's just saying this is how she felt.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's essentially like reading a psalm, except we get it in a chapter and not 150 books. So
151 if you're Catholic.
And also bitter to me when you...
Are you keeping that in?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but also bitter to me kind of sounds personal as well. Like, I wouldn't say like, oh, they're bitter. Like God's bitter. That doesn't make sense in this situation. Mm-hmm. That's more to me. I'm bitter. And I don't know if we're talking about in the sense of like, I'm distraught, or if I'm like, I kind of have some beef with God too. Because, rightfully so, again, she has the right. And I know, again, retrospect, we shouldn't think that, but it's okay for her to have a little beef.
When you're going through stuff like that, you start to wonder.
You start to wonder. And then, again, she just lived in the world for 10 years, so now she's like, I essentially lived in a pagan world that was, again, the wash bowl of the old people. And old Testament, not old people. I'm sorry.
I was going along with it. I wouldn't even...
Yeah, I didn't even notice.
The book of the old people.
But this is the wash basin, the wash bowl. And I lived there for 10 years, and I come back, I've lost everything. But the thing about it is the people didn't recognize her any different. They said, oh my gosh, is that Naomi? The pleasant one? Naomi? Like, and 10 years makes a difference in people.
It does, yeah.
Like, my 100 pounds in 10 years probably made a big difference.
Yeah, same.
And so she probably came in. She probably had more wrinkles. And listen, after dealing with 3 deaths, I'd probably have about 100.
Yeah.
So now she's all wrinkly. Her hair's probably not the prettiest color when she left. It's probably starting to turn a little white.
She got bags under her eyes.
Taking care of herself like she should.
Yeah.
And so they still recognize her. And they're like, Naomi. No, call me Mara. And she says, I went out full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Now, isn't that crazy that that's the exact opposite of what happened in verse 1? She thought that it was empty because there was no food. She leaves for 10 years. Notice how the narrative changed. Notice how time changes your perspective of a situation. She had it all here. She knew she had it all here. But it took, well, in this situation, 21 verses, but 10 plus years for her to understand what happened.
Well, chapter 1, it's amazing what you can break down in just simply 22 verses. But like you said, 10 plus years worth of information. This has been great. So thank you all for joining us in this first episode. We really don't know exactly where this podcast is going to go. Hopefully great places. Do want to thank Coffee with a Twist and Pastor Jonathan Nelson for allowing us to use this space. We may use this couch and table. They do have a studio that they have graciously allowed us to use from time to time if needed. But there is an event going on in here, so we don't want to disturb them. But thank you all for joining us in the first episode of Holy Grounds. Thank you, ChatGPT and Pastor John. We'll see you guys next week. Take care.